Welcome back to Half Court with your hosts Logan Dolby and Matt McClure on Calm Radio. All right, guys, we are talking a little bit of Eastern Conference power rankings here. We're going to start from the bottom up. Number 15 is our expected team to finish at the basement of the Eastern Conference here, and that is the Charlotte Hornets. Barely missing out on the playoffs last year, but they lose their star player and Kemba Walker, really the franchise face there for quite a while now. They really didn't add any pieces that excites you. They're a very young team. They brought in Terry Rozier, who was an absolute force for the Celtics every once in a while, but he hasn't seemed to get really that consistency going yet in his pro career. I'm not really a huge fan of this lineup, and I don't exactly believe in this team. McClure, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I agree. I don't really believe in this team at all as well. They're going to be in the basement of the Eastern Conference, and it's because Kemba Walker isn't there anymore, and you saw they were competing for a playoff spot, like an 8 spot. They never really could get there. They'd always be 9, 10, could sneak in an 8, but never really could do it with Kemba Walker. Now without him, you're really going to be struggling. Terry Rozier, I like that addition. They're a young squad. Malik Monk, you want to see him take a step next year. Miles Bridges, he had a pretty good year last year. You want to see him grow a little bit. Cody Zeller's still there at the center spot. You got a little bit of veteran leadership there, and Nick Batum. It's going to be a tough year for the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, not really a big fan of this squad at all. You have some nice young players, and you really have like a Kentucky all growed up version, basically. Like if you guys are familiar with the Rugrats, like and then they did the all grown up series. This is basically Kentucky all grown up with Malik Monk, with PJ Washington, with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I mean, these are all guys who had success at the college level, and then they really could never get it to translate. We don't know yet about PJ Washington. I've almost seen enough of Malik Monk now where his player efficiency rating isn't where you want it to be. He's not hitting those shots for you at the 2-guard position, which is what they brought him in to do. PJ Washington has a nice frame. He's got nice size, and we'll see what this Miles Bridges kid can do. But for right now, they're too young. They're too inexperienced, and right now this franchise just seems like they're gearing up for another rebuild.
Yeah, it's going to be a long rebuild too, and they're going to have to build it through the draft. Like I said earlier, I think Terry Rozier brings a nice piece to your team at the point guard position. He isn't Kemba Walker, but he can give you some solid minutes, and he's probably going to be their leading scorer. And I expect Miles Bridges to be pretty good this year. I liked what I saw from him. He's a high flyer. He needs to work on his jump shot a little bit, but I like how he can get up and dunk and slam it. I like his defensive ability. I think he's going to be good, but overall, this team's just not going to be there, and that's why they're going to be dead last in the East, in our opinion.
Yeah. Moving on to number 14 in our power rankings, that is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kind of the same story here. A lot of young talent, a lot of guys that we haven't really had a chance to see that much, like a Dylan Windler that you bring in from Belmont, who had a really good March Madness. He had a really efficient season there at Belmont, and a Darius Garland, who was out all last year in the college game, played for Vanderbilt. A lot of people were really high on this prospect at point guard. We'll see how he fits in, if he actually makes a full recovery here, if we'll even see him at the beginning of the year. But right now they've got Colin Sexton, who gave Cleveland fans some hope. They take him at around like number 8. He was a lottery pick for them 2 years ago. He had a slow start, and then he really caught fire towards the end of the season. Really started to improve his numbers once he had the ball in his hands more. But you don't know how this is going to play out with 2 ball dominant point guards here. But at least what sets them apart for me is that they still have Kevin Love. They've got a Brandon Knight, who I'm a fan of. I like the guy. I like his game. Ante Zizic showed some potential last year. Jordan Clarkson has been a solid player in the league. And Tristan Thompson, he's been a ghost of his former self, but the man's 27 years old. You start messing around with those Kardashians, really messes with your head. He got paid. LeBron got him paid. He's got to show up big time next year for these guys. I mean, minus 302 for his plus minus last year. Not great for them, but they do have Kevin Love. So that, for me, that's what sets them apart.
Yeah, I agree. I like Kevin Love as a player. I think he's a great leader, and he's going to bring a great veteran leadership to this team. I'm expecting Colin Sexton to have a big year for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He averaged 16.7 points a game last year. 3 rebounds and 3 assists. I think that assist number needs to be higher for Colin Sexton. This team, they're just not there yet. They got a new head coach in John Beilein, who was at Michigan, had a lot of success there. Let's see if that translates to the NBA level. I don't know. We just don't know. You saw what he did there. It was great at the Big Ten, but we'll see here for the Cleveland Cavaliers. You still got Cedi Osman. I think that's pretty funny. Here's a guy that can stretch the floor a little bit with his jump shot, but that's pretty much about it. This Cleveland Cavaliers team, they're not going to be that good, but they're not last, in our opinion, just because they got the Kevin Love and the Tristan Thompson, those leaders on that team.
Hey, man, do not poo-poo Osman. He was good in that Team USA versus Turkey game in the FIBA World Cup. He was solid, man. He had a good showing against some NBA players. So, this guy, he might have some hidden potential. You never know. But moving on to number 13, we're talking about the Washington Wizards. This is a franchise that, oh, my gosh. At one point, there were a lot of high hopes. They made the Eastern Conference Finals the 1 year, right?
They made a run in the playoffs.
Yeah, they didn't make the Eastern Conference Finals. They made the semifinals.
Yeah,
got kicked out. But this was a solid team. Now you lose John Wall for the whole year. You still have your star in Bradley Beal, but other than that, there's not much around this team. I mean, we're talking about Ish Smith as your starting point guard. I hate Ish Smith. He's terrible. He was terrible for the process Sixers. He was terrible in Detroit, and he's going to be terrible in Washington. There's nothing about this team that excites me. You bring in like a Davis Bertans who fit in really well in San Antonio just because Pop knows how to get the best out of those real low-key players that nobody's ever heard of. Thomas Bryant is a nice player. They re-signed him in the offseason, picked up Admiral Schofield in the draft, and Isaiah Thomas is your number 2 point guard there. He's a huge defensive liability, hasn't been healthy in 2 years. This team is going nowhere fast.
No, they're going to be bad this year. It's going to be the Bradley Beal show, and we'll see really how good he is. I mean, this is a really, really bad Washington Wizards team. He's a really solid player. He'll probably be gone by the trade deadline, honestly. We'll see. He signed that mega deal, so he honestly might stay. But you mentioned Ish Smith. I like him a little bit. His game's okay, but I see where you're coming from. He's out there. He's not really going to do much there for you. I like Thomas Bryant in the middle there at center. He showed a lot of promise. But other than that, you really got nothing going here for you if you're the Washington Wizards. C.J. Miles, Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas really hasn't been that good since that crazy year in Boston, but since then has really just went downhill. This team's really going to be struggling with the injured John Wall, who's probably going to miss all of next year. So it's going to be very tough for Washington to compete in the Eastern Conference.
Well, recently the GM for Washington, who is new, he came out and said that they are not looking to trade their star player here at the deadline. They're not looking to move Beal at all. So we'll see what happens. I mean, GMs talk out of, both sides of their face most of the time. I think maybe he's just trying to appease Bradley Beal here, try and have him stay around and then possibly move him at the deadline here. It would make sense if this team is absolutely dead in the water. But as of now, they seem to have their sights set on Beal leading that team to really see what he has, and to see if he can be that true alpha dog, that number one.
Yeah, and he's going to have a great opportunity too with this Wizards team, man. I mean, you added some pieces there in the draft, but you just don't really have a good squad there. With John Wall being out, he's going to be the man, and we'll see if he is the man, because we all know he can score the basketball, but let's see what else he can do on the defensive end and just be a leader for that Washington Wizards squad.
All right, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break here. We're going to be back with our 12 through 9 rankings, and hang with us. We will be right back.
Welcome back to Half Court with Matt McClure and Logan Dolby, live on Tom Radio.
All right, welcome back, guys. Had a little bit of technical difficulties there with some show log stuff. Sorry about that if you guys were listening at home or watching on Facebook Live. Didn't mean to keep you guys held up there. That is our bad. So we are back at number 12 for our power rankings, talking about the New York Knicks. Some say that this is going to be the basement dweller of the East, but McClure, we're a little bit more high on this team than most.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't win in free agency, but they did bring in some okay pieces. You got Julius Randle in there, and I like his game a lot. I think he's going to be a pretty good piece for the New York Knicks. They got some veterans in there. They added Taj Gibson. He's been in the league for forever. You got R.J. Barrett. Marcus Morris is there. It's a pretty decent squad. I mean, they're going to compete, but what you hope for if you're a New York Knicks fan is they get some kind of hope there where they get 30 wins, because last year they had 17 wins. They stunk. If you're a Knicks fan, you're looking for 30 wins. Can you get that? David Fizdale is a good NBA coach, and he stunk last year, but let's see with a little bit more talent what you can do. They're not going to make the playoffs, but this team is going to be better than what they were last year.
Yeah, Kevin Knox will continue to grow his game. Marcus Morris primarily brings that veteran leadership to that team. They picked up a guy like Elfrid Payton, who really went off last year, somebody who took a very long time to develop his game, but he looked really good with the Pelicans last year. And like you said, R.J. Barrett, this man can flat out shoot the basketball. He's going to be their primary scorer all around, outside the arc, inside the arc. I think this kid is going to be something really special. He was a number one overall prospect coming out of high school, and taking him at number 3 in the NBA draft, that's got to be a steal.
Yeah, I like his game a lot. We're going to learn a lot about him, because if he can shoot the basketball from 15 feet on, he's going to be a lethal weapon out there for the New York Knicks. I like what you said there about Kevin Knox. He's got to be better this year. Obviously, this is his second year now. Let's see what he can do, and let's see what you got there if you're the New York Knicks and Kevin Knox. This is going to be an interesting team. I'm really interested to see where this team goes, because they could either be a little bit better or be just flat out bad. If you're a Knicks fan, you got to be happy with what you got here. I mean, it obviously stinks that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant aren't there, but you got to work with what you got, and we'll see where they go.
Yeah, and moving on to our number 11 team here, the Chicago Bulls, 22-60 a year ago. We expect them to take a step up. They drafted Kobe White out of North Carolina. A lot of people think that he has a lot of potential. He can really run the floor. He can shoot. He can pass. He can really do it all. They signed Tomas Satoransky from the Washington Wizards, one of the bright spots from that team a year ago. He's going to be plugged in at their starting point guard position. He actually played really well. A player efficiency rating of 16.5. He's only 26 years old. He's going to come in, give you some decent minutes. And of course, I mean, Zach LaVine, Otto Porter, and Lauri Markkanen, excuse me. These guys are absolute ballers. They're very young, but they've already proven that they can get it done.
Yeah, I like this team a lot, and I think they could maybe slip into the playoffs if things go right for them. They're going to be on the outside looking in, but they could maybe sneak in there. You got some offensive weapons here on the Chicago Bulls. You saw what Zach LaVine did last year towards the end of the year. He was taking over games with his scoring. Lauri Markkanen, he's got to stay healthy for an entire year. He missed some time last year, but he's a very efficient player. You think you got something there at the 4 spot. And you got Otto Porter Jr. Otto Porter. He's a good player. He was on that Washington team with John Wall and Bradley Beal. He was that third guy, but he's a solid player there, and he's going to help Levine and Markkanen out. And here's a guy that really, I think, needs to step up this year for the Chicago Bulls. That's Wendell Carter Jr. He was an 8th overall pick for the Chicago Bulls a year ago. You saw what he could do on the defensive end. He's got to work a little bit on his offensive game on the block. He's got to work on his post moves. Let's just see something more there from Wendell Carter Jr. And they got my boy off the bench, and Thad Young, man. That guy grinds. He plays hard. He can hit the three if you need him to. He's a little bit undersized, but he plays his heart out. I like that signing for the Chicago Bulls. This team's going to be pretty solid next year.
All right, and on to number 10, the Orlando Magic. They were the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs a year ago, basically bringing back the same squad. And the reason why we kind of have them kicked out of the Eastern Conference playoffs this year, well, I mean, just look at these point guards that they have on their team. DJ Augustin, who's been around the league for a while now, 30 years old. He can put up some numbers, but he doesn't really do anything that excites you. And then Markelle Fultz, the biggest draft bust in the history of forever, basically, is what it seems like right now. He can't get his head straight. He can't get his back fixed, and his jumper is still trash. So we'll see if he can hit the court this year. Maybe Orlando Magic fans have something to get excited about, but I really highly doubt it. And look who it is, another former Sixer backing him up in MCW, Michael Carter Williams. Oh, my gosh. He's still in the league too. What? Who keeps signing this guy? I understand he has size, but he doesn't do anything for you. Jonathan Isaac is a nice player. He'll continue to grow. Aaron Gordon, he's an all-star, and Nikolai Vucevic is another all-star, but their bench is absolute trash. Wesley Iwundu, Alfarik Aminu, and Mo Bamba, who he's got nice size, but he's still 2 years away from actually wreaking havoc on the league if he ever develops. I don't like the depth of this team at all.
Yeah, and Nick Vucevic, he's a really solid player. I like his game, all-star last year. Aaron Gordon, he's a really solid player as well. He can high fly, jam that thing. You saw he worked a lot on his offensive side of the game this year or last year, so we're going to see a development there. Evan Fournier, he's an okay piece. He'll get you 12 to 15 points a night, but the real big issue here is the bench. Markelle Fultz, you have no idea when he's coming back. The biggest bust in NBA history. He's bigger than Kwame Brown, 100%. Terrence Ross, he's a good piece that come off your bench. You saw what he did last year. He's a solid player. But Al-Farouq Aminu, I mean, every single time Al-Farouq Aminu played a game for the Portland Trailblazers, he was like a major piece for that team. I'm like, this guy stinks. He can't shoot. I mean, he's a waste of space sometimes out there. He's got good size. He can defend, but his offensive game is nowhere to be found. This Orlando Magic team, we got them there at the 10 spot. It's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Then moving on to the Atlanta Hawks at the number 9 spot. We're pretty high on this Atlanta Hawks team. We're thinking that they can sneak into the playoffs, possibly, depending on some other factors that go on that we will touch on later. But right now, last season, 29-53, a lot of really nice young pieces there. McClure, what are you thinking about this squad here?
Yeah, this team could definitely make a run at the playoffs for that 8-7 seed, possibly. Trae Young was great. I'm a big fan of John Collins. I know you are too. This guy can ball, and we saw that at length last year. Kevin Huerter, he's been pretty good. DeAndre Hunter, Alex Len is their starting lineup. Alex Len, he's not going to be a big-time center for you, but he's been in the league for a little bit now. He's going to play some solid defense. He doesn't have a lot of offensive game, and when you look at their bench, you still got DeAndre Bembry there. Alan Crabb was a really good signing for them, and they got our boy Chandler Parsons, man. That big contract, he's in Atlanta. He probably won't even play, but still, he's there. And they got Cam Reddish and Jabari Parker. Cam Reddish obviously in the draft and Jabari Parker in free agency. So we'll have to see with this team. They're going to compete. They're going to play hard, but I think they're going to be battling for that 8 spot all year.
And don't forget to mention your boy Bruno Fernando.
Yeah.
You were absolutely loving this guy
Yeah,
in college.
I think the reason I say that is because I wanted him on the Sixers squad because I am a fan of the Sixers because he can run up and down the court. He doesn't have that good of an offensive game, but he can get you rebounds. He can block shots for you. So Bruno Fernando going to the Atlanta Hawks, I think he will be a big contributor coming off the bench on the defensive side of things and the rebounding side of things. He's going to have to work on his offensive game, and that'll come over time.
And let me tell you something right here. This Atlanta Hawks team, this is like a tuna melt right here, okay? But without the celery, okay? It's still a good sandwich, right? You got John Collins is your tuna. I mean, he's the dude that's putting it in the bucket for you. He's grinding it out on defense, getting the boards. And then you got the Mayo holding it all together. That's Trae Young.
Okay.
Trae Young is keeping this whole squad together, but you need the celery, man. You got the onion bits, you got the little pieces of egg, you got the bread going. It's a nice solid foundation, but you need that crunch, man. And I'm telling you, it might be Cam Reddish this year. It could be DeAndre Hunter, 2 first-round picks that they brought in this past draft. I'm very high on both of these young players. I think Cam Reddish really slipped in the draft where he didn't deserve to. People say he doesn't have that killer mentality in him, but you know what? The NBA is a different beast. You're not playing at Duke where you're constantly getting outshined by, first of all, your head coach, and second of all, Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett. So he is going to be that number one option coming off the bench. I'm telling you, man, this is a tuna melt. It's all coming together in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you said, they need that just it factor on that team, that guy that you can give them the ball and they can take over a game. They don't have that. You saw it a little bit with Trae Young, but he isn't that kind of player.
All right, moving on now. These are who we expect to make the playoffs here. Starting at number 8, the Detroit Pistons, going 41-41 last year. We got an asterisk here next to the Detroit Pistons. What's that all about?
Well, I think it's going to be a health thing for them. They got a great coach in Dwayne Casey. Blake Griffin, you know what he can do. Andre Drummond's a really good center in the NBA, but these guys are constantly hurt, and we never know if they're going to be playing or not. You saw they snuck into the playoffs last year, but Blake Griffin was hurt. He had that bad knee, and they got swept by the Milwaukee Bucks, and it wasn't even close. This is a team that can be very good. You look at their team and you're like, okay, you got Luke Kennard. He showed some good spots last year towards the playoffs. He's a sharp shooter. They got some pieces on this team, man, but they never stay healthy. And that's why we got an asterisk next to their name.
And at number 7, we have the reigning defending NBA champions, Toronto Raptors. We think they're going to make the playoffs. They might barely squeak in. The loss of Kawhi Leonard this offseason is absolutely devastating. They have still a decent team here, but you don't have that star player to push you forward. I mean, Marc Gasol he's getting up there. He's 33. Kyle Lowry's 32. So, I mean, this isn't the same team that they had last year. They're going to have issues getting up and down the court. I think they still have Pascal Siakam. And if they can't get that transition offense going, I think Siakam's upside is very limited because he is one heck of an athlete. But as far as, a pure scorer, somebody who's going to take care of the basketball for you, I just don't see it from this guy. And I think this team is taking a major step back. You look at their small forwards, OG Anunoby and Stanley Johnson. That's you're not going to compete there with them. Since the East is pretty weak still, we're thinking that they're still riding the high from last year, but they're going to take a major step back.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and on to number 6, the Miami Heat, picking up Jimmy Butler in the offseason with that sign and trade with the Philadelphia 76ers. They're pretty excited to have J-Butt down there playing for that Miami Heat squad, especially since they lost their superstar player, Dwayne Wade, not as though he had been producing like a superstar as of late, but more so because he's a name that everybody knows, a face that the people in Miami love. But this year, I think they have a good enough team. They barely made the playoffs last year. Or they barely missed the playoffs last year, excuse me. I think this year they get in.
Yeah, main reason why is because you got Jimmy Butler, somebody who can just make clutch shots and take over a basketball game. You saw it a lot last year when he went to Philly, hit some big-time shots. You still got Goran Dragic. I like Dion Waiters. Let's see if he can stay healthy for a year. The Miami Heat will be a playoff team in 2019.
And on to the Indiana Pacers at the 5 spot. Last year, 48-34. They battled it out with Boston in the first round of the playoffs, got beat there. They're going to get Victor Oladipo back, who's their number 1 guy. They have 2 very good young big men in Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. We have them sitting here at number 5. McClure, explain to us why.
Yeah, here's the thing with them. Victor Oladipo's coming off a very scary injury, and he'll be back, obviously, next year for them, and he'll be a big piece on why they're there. But they got a great coach, and Miles Turner still there. He's going to have a good year. It's just they don't have that, crunchy celery, man. They don't. I mean, that's why. They got some great players around them, but they don't have that one guy. They got rid of Bogdanovich in the offseason, who was pretty much their guy scoring the ball when Oladipo got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So this team is just they're a good team, but they're not ahead of some of these other teams, 4-3-2-1.
Yeah, this could be a kind of a sneaky deep team here. They got some guys with experience like a Jeremy Lamb or a Dougie McBuckets, who I was a huge fan of coming out of Creighton. He's been a relatively solid guy, kind of, he is who he is. He's going to be a 3-and-D type of player, but Victor Oladipo coming back, and the signing of Malcolm Brogdon to a big contract this offseason. That was a guy who was a 90-50-40 guy last year. So that is incredible stat line there for a guy who was not known for shooting coming out of college. He plays great defense. He plays with high intensity. I think that move really pushes him over the edge.
Yeah, he'll definitely help them out. I mean, he's a great piece for them coming to Indiana from Milwaukee. And this is a guy that, like you said, he wasn't really a shooter coming out of college there at Virginia. He's really just transformed into a great player in the NBA, and we'll see what he does here on a grindy Indiana team.
Just got a text here from our boy Cyrus thinking that Victor Oladipo is the celery that's going to supply the crunch of that tuna melt that is the Indiana Pacers. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I just saw that, and my response to that is, how far have they gotten with him? I mean, it's just he's a good player, and he's become an all-star for that team, but last year he got hurt. The year before they took the Cavs to 7 games. What have they done? They haven't done much. They need another player like Victor Oladipo on that team, and they don't have it.
Okay, our number 4 spot is the Boston Celtics in the East. 2 years ago, a lot of people were saying, man, this team's going to be competing for chips. Every single year they have so much draft capital. They have all these star players. Everybody's going to sign with them. And now look at them. They are a ghost of what they once were. I mean, they lose Irving in the offseason. He goes to Brooklyn. They bring in Kemba Walker, who is probably a better fit, honestly, in a lead team there. He's more of a heady player. He's not a selfish guy, but he's not that. He's a star, but he's not on the level that Kyrie is. He played on a really bad team. We're going to see what happens whenever he's actually put with some solid players. They lose Al Horford, who was a major piece of what they wanted to do in that system. They still have Jaylen Brown. They retain Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, who was a little bit banged up during the Team USA FIBA run there, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. And Gordon Hayward comes back. He's 2 years removed from that gruesome injury that he suffered. So this team it's going to be a good team. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that they are even Eastern Conference Championship material. What are you thinking here, McClure?
Well, I think Gordon Hayward is going to have a big year for the Boston Celtics this year. He kind of came in last year, and coming off that injury, you saw that he was a little bit, timid and soft in his offensive game. I expect a big year from Gordon Hayward. I like the Kemba Walker signing. Like you said, he isn't Kyrie Irving, but this guy can flat out ball. You hope Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown start stepping up their game, because guess what? You don't got Big Al anymore. These guys got to step up for the Boston Celtics. So I like this team. It's going to be very interesting that we got them at the 4. They're going to be right there. They got a great coach in Brad Stevens, and they got a pretty solid young core to work with in Boston.
And our number 3 team, the Brooklyn Nets. This is a team that I am really, really high on this year, even without Kevin Durant, who's out all year with that injury. But they go too deep at every position, and that's what I love about him. And I love Kenny Atkinson as a head coach. He gets the most out of his players every single game. They play like dogs. And they're in Brooklyn. They absolutely are ferocious. Kyrie Irving coming in free agency. They got Spencer Dinwiddie coming off the bench, who is in contention every single year for 6th man of the year. They bring in DeAndre Jordan. They have Jarrett Allen, who is a really high upside big, still very young, growing into his own body, backing him up at center. At power forward, you have Wilson Chandler and then Rodion Kuruc, who has a decent amount of experience playing in the NBA. He's only 20 years old, so he's still going to develop and grow. And then Taurean Prince, and on the bench, my boy, Joe Harris. Oh, my gosh. I mean, I love this team right now. Caris LeVert, who just got a big contract, and then they bring in Garrett Temple. He's a tried and true veteran at the shooting guard position. I love the depth of this team. They go 10 deep.
Yeah, this team's going to be really good. And when you add a star player like Kyrie, that's really going to help out. Obviously, Kevin Durant, he's injured. He won't be there at all next year, so don't even talk about him. But you got Jarrett Allen coming off of that bench, who was a starter. You got DeAndre Jordan, who I like as a signing. It really didn't make much sense signing him because you got a Jarrett Allen, but nevertheless, he's still a pretty solid player. Really has been working on those free throws. He can rebound the basketball. You mentioned Caris LeVert, but I really think this Taurean Prince kid is going to be a big-time player for the Brooklyn Nets. They're a deep squad, and we got them at 3, man. It's going to be great to see them in action next year.
And at number 2, we have the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference. Basically the same team, but they lose Malcolm Brogdon, which is kind of a huge loss for them. They still have one of the best players in the league in Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's hands down. But what we noticed whenever we were doing these rankings, why we have them taking a step back, is that they're another team that likes to get things going in transition, and yet their whole roster is filled out with 30-plus-year-olds. Eric Bledsoe, he's getting there at 28. He has an injury history. George Hill, 32, is your backup point guard. Kyle Korver is 37. You really think his old cricket legs are getting up and down the court? I don't think so. The dude's going to have to pop 4 ibuprofens every half. Chris Middleton is a solid player, don't get me wrong, but he got a fat payday. You got the Lopez brothers, both old. Brooke Lopez expanding his game. Ersan Ilyasova is forever old. And Wes Matthews, who I am not a big fan of whatsoever. Captain inefficiency at your starting 2 guard there. I think this team takes a step back.
Yeah, I agree. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's a great player, and he's going to pretty much carry that team all season long. And you got Chris Middleton, who I've always said is a great Robin to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Brooke Lopez really stepped up his game last year, hitting the 3 ball, stretching the floor. It was great to see Brooke Lopez take that step. Last year, Wes Matthews, I know you're not a big fan of him. He just kind of is out there. He'll shoot a 3 once in a while, but he sucks. Yeah,
he sucks.
Yeah, so it's just this team they're going to take a step back, but they're going to be a really solid team.
All right, and number 1, finally we get to the Philadelphia 76ers, a team that was just at the bottom of the league year in and year out a few years ago, and now they've got one heck of a starting 5 here with Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, Josh Richardson, and Al Horford. I mean, oh my gosh, this is a deep team. They have chemistry now with Ben, Tobias, Joel Embiid. I'm really excited to see how Al Horford comes into the mix. He's going to play some 5, play some 4. I'm really, really excited about this team. This has to be the year for them, right?
Yeah, it has to be the team for them this year. I mean, this is it. This is it. You had the process days. You were so close last year. Now you bring in Al Horford this year. You lose Jimmy Butler. This is it. If you're the Philadelphia 76ers, Got to get it done. You signed Tobias Harris to a big-time deal, but the main question mark I have about this team is the backup center position, because that means Joel Embiid and Al Horford, one of those guys are going to have to be on the court at all times. And you saw in the playoffs against the Raptors when Greg Monroe came in, they were just – the Raptors took advantage of that. Now they got Kyle O'Quinn there at the backup center. He's going to have some big-time minutes and games for them to kind of just be there for the 76ers. This is going to be a big-time year for Philadelphia. They're number one, man. Go Sixers.
If the Sixers aren't the number one seed, or if they don't even get to an Eastern Conference playoff or Eastern Conference Finals, is Brett Brown gone?
I think he has to go. If they don't get to the Eastern Conference Finals this year, I think he's got to go. They got to be in the position to make the NBA Finals.
All right, guys, that's our show. We're up at the top of the hour. Thanks for listening. It's been great. For Logan Dolby and Matt McClure, this is Half Court.